This YouTube video contains the following.
Odin can go fuck himself. That's how good he is, okay? You just hide your kids, hide your wife. That's all I'm saying, okay? Before he does this ability. If we would round all this up, who would I go for? I've never done this, but let's go. So, we're talking about the Progressive Chance Summon event starting on June 9th, which also will be synced with a Summon Rush. Now, before we get into this, if you're gonna go into this, I want to just go through this. It's gonna be a link in the description. If you're going for Full and Silver Heart, we've already planned how we're gonna do this, okay? So we are actually planning on skipping this Summon Rush and skipping a Champion Chase. But if you need these points, I mean, then you kind of, well, you kind of have to go for this. Then there's a little bit of a discussion of like, who should you go for here? But with that being said, a 15x, a 25x, or whatever it is, the chances of you pulling that is very low. I feel like if you're going for epics, and there's like a 15x or 25x chance. If you're going for like Geomancer and you're pulling Sacred Shards, then you have a higher chance to getting Geo. Like we got 2 Geos, I believe, in the recent Progressive Chance event, for the simple fact that like you're either getting a pulling a legendary or a epic. So it's very like you're gonna get up to like 15x, 25x really quick with Sacred Shards. But, you know, I would do that for Geo. I wouldn't do that for any sort of epic. And that's epics. That's not even legendaries. So, I mean, and the chance of you actually getting any of these, let's just put it like this. If you feel like, you know, if you want to plan ahead, go ahead and just, you know, want to disappoint yourself intentionally, go ahead and go for this. And really hope you get something. You might get something if you swipe your card a couple times, you know, then you might get this champion, and sometimes you don't even get that. But I will give you my honest opinion about all these champions. Some of these I'm not really sure about. We're going to go through the kits of everyone, and some of these I actually know about. But let's start off with the June 9th, which is going to be the Pelops the Victor, and that's from Ancient Shards, Primals, and Sacreds, okay? Now, dog shit. Okay, next one. Okay, no. So one thing that I'm gonna sort of praise over and over and over again in this video is that it all depends on your account. So what does Pelops do? Okay, Pelops has a nice sort of passive where he can, if he gets hit, you can HP burn people. You can also petrify people. You have a built-in magma shield with a taunt. So these two things synergize very well. If you don't have a reliable HP burner, this could be your guy, you know? Other than that, I really don't feel like this ability hits that hard. And the A1 doesn't hit that hard either. So yeah, his value is in these two abilities. And to summarize it, again, has a if you get hit, then you place HP burn. This goes down to about, what was it, 50%. The chance decreases to 50% if this champion is under a decreased defense debuff. Put block active skills, or put block debuffs on him, and he's fine. And have someone like a cooldown resetter or something to sort of always keep the taunt up, I guess. But yeah. Other than that, I wouldn't really go for this guy. Again, if you just started out and, you know, you don't have any other HP burner and you don't have anyone who can petrify, and you don't have anyone that can, like, steal some buffs, because on the A2, attacks one enemy will ignore 50% of the target's defense. If the target is under a HP burn debuff, the damage inflicted by the skill increases by 10% for every turn remaining on any debuffs on this champion, and the target stacks up to 200%. If the damage inflicted by this skill is less than 50% of the target's max HP, steals all buffs from the target and places a stun debuff on them for 2 turns. These effects cannot be resisted if the target is under an HP burn. So yeah, he can steal buffs, so that's kind of nice as well. But yeah, if you have another AoE burner and you have someone that can steal buffs, Magma Shield is kinda nice, I'm not gonna lie, but if you have Volcardia card, you have an AoE burner, I don't really see the reason in going for Pelops. Sorry. Okay, going for the next champion, which is Masahiro the Belmonk. Now, I can definitely see a lot more value in this guy for the simple fact that he is one of the only revivers in the Shadowkin faction. At least AoE reviver, I'm pretty sure. Like, Shadowkin lacks revivers a lot. Maybe there's one, maybe there's two. I don't really... I know one epic for sure, but other than that, I've struggled immensely having to be able to revive. I'm struggling in the well, I was struggling in the faction previously. But on his A2... let's see here. No, on his A3. Attacks all enemies before attacking and revives all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter. This skill can be used even if there are no dead allies. Has a booking up to 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn and block buffs debuff for 2 turns. Has a 100% chance when booked of placing a 30% decrease speed debuff and block buffs debuff for 2 turns instead if the target is a boss. Damage based on HP. So I actually went for this fusion solely because of this. The A1 is an AoE, has a 50% chance, booking up to 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased crit rate debuff for 1 turn. Then we have the A2, attacks one enemy before attacking, has a 100% chance when booked up of transferring all debuffs from all allies to the target. Heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP and places a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns. Then we have the passive. All allies receive 1% less damage for each turn taken by enemies and allies while they remain alive. Stacks up to 15%. Each champion's damage reduction resets when they die or between rounds. If there are multiple champions on the same team, same as always. Allies revived by these champions are immune to stun, freeze, sleep, provoke, true fear, and petrification debuffs until the start of their turn. Well, that's kind of nice. Resets when the revived ally takes their turn, is killed, or between rounds. And then again, if there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate, yada yada. Then we have I don't like that it's specifically force champions, but increase force ally speed in all battles by 25%. So that's kind of nice, but I would prefer it being a 19% on everyone instead. But yeah, if you are lacking a reviver, a AoE reviver for that matter of fact, then Masahiro is definitely your guy. And I will almost bet that most of you guys are lacking an AoE reviver in the Shadowkin faction. But I'm just guessing. Then we have Armanz. Oh, okay. So Armanz, he's good. He's barbarian. Where's barbarians? He's good, he's annoying, and, well, let's actually go through his kit. A1, attacks one enemy, has a 35% chance, booked to 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of a random active skill by 2 turns. Fails this champion's turn meter by 10% for each round, for each turn added to the cooldown. Then A2, attacks all enemies, steals all the turn meter of each target except enemies under sheep debuffs. Also places stun debuff 1 turn on all enemies not under a sheep debuff. Then we have A3, places a sheep debuff on an enemy for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be blocked. Then has a 100% chance when booked of removing all buffs from all enemies. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% for each buff removed. And then the passive, whenever a sheep debuff is removed or expires on an enemy, increase the cooldown of a random active skill on that enemy to its max. Fills this turn meter, champion's turn meter by 10% for each turn added to the cooldown. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate, and then a 28% speed. I mean, if you don't have Fabian, you don't have a lot of like CC and stuff, he's still pretty good, can be kind of annoying. But his counter is Wand. So yeah, some of the CC can be reflected back to him. But I do find myself sometimes banning Arman still in Live Arena. As far as PvE, he's not really known for PvE, to be fair. He's known to be really annoying in PvP, but ever since the Wand of Submission came out and more people have gotten it, you know, the more people has it, the less effective he is, basically, kind of. Alright, then we'll have a look at the next one, which is Ragash. I need to double check here. I'm gonna do a quick little... see here. Skinwalkers. This guy... there it is. He is pretty freaking decent. So I don't have him myself. I can only like sort of tell you about my experience going against this guy in arena and just PvP. He can dish out quite a bit of damage. I could also see him being very nice in PvE. Let's go through his kit. A1 attacks one enemy 2 times, places a 6% increased defense or buff on this champion for 2 turns. A2 attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance when booked of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff on each enemy for 2 turns. Before attacking, also has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn after attacking. Then A3 places strengthen buff and a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns. At the start of each turn, places a perfect veil buff for 1 turn on the ally with the highest attack. Inflicts 20% more damage against targets whose defense is lower than this champion's. Yeah, I could see him being... it's like, if you pull him, he could work kind of decent in PvE as the damage dealer, and could also be some sort of like assassin type champion in PvP. But obviously there are better choices out there, but I wouldn't say that he's bad. Not at all. Then we have Staltus Dragonbane, which I believe is in here. There he is. Let's go through his kit. So one thing that I just want to point out, my experience with this guy is he's tanky. He has a dragon that just does a bunch of AoE damage and can hit like a truck. That being said, let's go. Axe of Glory attacks one enemy 2 times if the target is under any debuff. Each hit decreases target's turn mean by 10%. Attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. A3 places 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 3 turns, then attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a 25% decreased crit damage debuff for 2 turns on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense. Has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns on enemies whose attack is equal to or lower than their defense. So this is the one that is going to hit like a truck. Books down to 4 turn cooldown. I think people play him as the sort of support, tanky support that can dish out some damage in PvP. I wouldn't say he's in the meta, but you know, if he's not a bad choice for Live Arena, and I can see his role in PvE as well. Then we have the passive. Whenever an enemy attempts to place a weaken debuff or a decreased defense debuff or a poison debuff on this champion, reflects them back onto the attacker. Damage increases by 5% for each debuff on the target. Apparently this guy is super good for Dragon as well, so because of the passive, it just reflects back all the poisons to the Dragon. So if you need to, you know, Dragon is one of the easier ones to sort of get like high up into like just 10 plus hard, I guess. 10 plus hard can be a little bit difficult, but like you can push quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely of help, and Dragon, you know, has the speed gear. We recently had a 5x speed gear like drop rate. So I mean, yeah, kind of pretty good. Every time there's a 2x, 3x, or in this case 5x on speed gear, you kind of wanna, you know, go for it. Then we have Galut, Son of the Pact. I need to look him up. I don't really know what faction he is, and I don't want to sort of go through every faction. So I'm just gonna do this. He's in the orcs. Galut. Where are you? Here you. Okay, looks like one of the older champions. 4.6 in Hydra. Okay, let's go through his kit. Beheading Strike. Attacks one enemy before attacking. Decreases duration of all buffs on the target by 1 turn. Also has a 75% chance of placing a blocked buffs debuff for 2 turns. This effect is protected when placed. Okay, kind of cool. A2 attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn and a 60% decrease defense debuff for 2 turns. Decreases the turn meter of enemies without a stun debuff by 30%. A3 removes all debuffs from all allies, then heals them by 25% of this champion's max HP. Places a shield buff equal to 25% of this champion's max HP, and a 45 buff on all allies for 2 turns. Okay. And then we have the passive. For every 10 debuffs this champion's team receives, activates the Blood of the Pact skill. When activated in this way, the buffs placed by the Blood of the Pact skills are protected, thus not set the Blood of the Pact skill on cooldown. And then if there are multiple champions on the same team, yada yada. With a 35% ally HP. I mean, he's not the worst orc reading his kit. And he could be kind of nice for just being the defensive, you know, going on the defense, but I wouldn't pick this guy out of all the champions. We also have, oh, I don't need to look this guy up. This, if I would have gone for this event, I would bet everything on Odin. Odin can go fuck himself. That's how good he is, okay? If there is any Void champion support that I want, then it's Odin Faefather. Let's go through his kit and talk about how annoying he is and how he's just, you know, crushed my balls in live arena so many times. A1 attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a Berserk debuff for 2 turns. This debuff cannot be placed on bosses. Storm of Familiars, A2, remove all buffs from all enemies, has an 80% chance of placing a 60% decreased debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, also has an 80% chance of placing a stun debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. And then this son of a bitch ability, enemy max HP based, okay, just pointing that out. A3, books down to 3 turns, attacks one enemy, before attacking steals all your money. No, I was gonna say, no, that's rough. That's way too rough. What can I say? Nah. You just hide your kids, hide your wife. That's all I'm saying, okay? Before he does this ability. Attacks one enemy before attacking, steals all buffs from the target. The damage inflicted by the skill dependent on the target's type. Attack will inflict damage based on the target's attack. Defense will inflict damage based on the target's defense. HP support bosses will inflict damage based on the target's max HP. This attack will ignore 100% of the target's defense. No wonder it hit like a freaking truck. If the target was killed by this skill, which it obviously will be, this is what the text should be, but if the target was killed by this skill, revives a random dead ally with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. This ability can just lock him out. That's all I'm saying. Lock Odin out and you won't have an issue. And if you don't lock him out, then you will have a big issue. Straight out say, but for the champions I drool for, I will drool for them. I will be simping all the way. Then we have the passive. Every 9 turns places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn and also applies a buff spread effect, taking all buffs from this champion and placing them on all allies. So basically placing block damage on everyone for every 9 turns. Then this, okay, for me specifically, I have a couple Void champions. I have Leo, I have Gaspard, I have Tachyon. With this guy, I would buff all their speed by 40 fucking %. Holy Jesus. Go with the Arbiter on that and you're freaking Gucci. You know, I usually don't like when it's force only or whatever, but 40%? That's pretty good. And that's usually what it should be on, like, you know, if it's like Masahiro, he was like 25%, he should have been 35%, or maybe not 40% for just force. Then it would be fine. This guy is literally a god, so yeah. If you're going to bankrupt yourself, then you found your guy to bankrupt with. And if you have him, congratulations, I'm very jealous. Then we have Tumisia. Oh man, she sounds like a Sylvan Watcher. Could I be right in that? Huh? Let's see here. No, I'm definitely not. Oh, okay. You know what? Let's talk about this champion. No, hold on. No, hold on. Skinwalkers. There we go. I don't have this champion. But I am very sure, 99% sure, that all I'm gonna say is I want 4 Timishas, okay? And I want 4 separate Timishas. You know why? So I can sacrifice them all and put him on Marius so he becomes a +4. Because she is the, I don't know what you call it, but in order to empower Marius, you use this furry. That's what she's good for. No, but let's go through the kit. Attack A1 attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 6% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Has a 100% chance of placing a 6% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on the target before attacking if the target is under an HP burn. Then we have the A2, attacks all enemies, has a 75%, books up to 100% chance of placing an HP burn for 3 turns. Has a 75%, or 100% and 100% again, of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn on targets with 50% turn meter or more. Has a 70 or 100% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 3 turns on targets with less than a 50% turn meter. Then we have the A3, attacks one enemy, damage increases by 40% for each active HP burn debuff in the battle, up to 400%. Also has a 75% chance, going down up to 100% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. Decreases the target's turn meter by an additional 15% for each active HP burn debuff in the battle. Then we have the passive. Whenever an ally receives a freeze debuff has a 75% or has a 50% chance of replacing it with an HP burn for 2 turns instead. This debuff cannot be blocked or removed. Whenever an ally or enemy is under HP burn debuff, this champion is immune to a bunch of CC. I'm going to be very honest. Sooner or later, we're all gonna get Marius, okay? And Marius is arguably the best champion in the game, kind of. You know, he's great all over the place, and really, really good. I mean, how many times have we not gone against him in arena? And every time there's a little plus besides his frame, you get a little bit extra scared. If I would pull her, I would just, you know, keep her in the reserve vault until I get Marius. Sadly. Yeah, that's what I would do. But I also see the sort of lucrative reason why, you know, you should go for this. Because who doesn't want a +1, +2, +3, or +4 Marius? But then again, it's either her or Odin, and if you don't have Odin, go Odin. That's what I'm saying. Okay, then we have... Dude, when people go through this, I'm not sure if they go through all the champions. But goddamn, that's a lot of talking. On the June 10th, we have some other champions. Harima. Let's You know what? I've wanted Harima for the longest time. I think I went up against her a little bit in PvP, and then she just like ripped me a new asshole, and I was like, oh man, I really want Harima now. Used a lot before, not used as much nowadays. But let's go through the kit, shall we? Attacks 1 debasement. Attacks 1 enemy, has a 50% chance of placing someone in the basement. Has a 50% chance of decreasing it. Has a 50% chance of decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. And also has a 25% chance of placing. Also has a 25% chance of placing a 50% chance decrease attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns if the champion is critical. A2 attacks 1 enemy 3 times. Each hit decreases the target's defense by 5%, stacks up to 30%. Each hit also increases the champion's defense by 5%, stacks up to 100%. Instantly activates the Celestial Awe skill if this kills an enemy, which is this ability. Yeah, this is the one that she's kind of known for, I guess. You know, the dragon or the serpent, you go like fire all over the place. A3 attacks all enemies, plays a provoke debuff for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted if the target champion is from the demon spawn faction. That's this ability can hit like a truck. Then we have the passive. Enemy ignore defense effects are decreased by 50%. Damn. Champions from the demons spawn faction cannot inflict critical hits on this champion. This champion cannot land weak hits on champions from the demon spawn faction. She's not a bad choice. I think whoever would pull her would be kind of really happy with her. So yeah, I mean, this is out a lot of damage. Enemy ignore defense effects are decreased by 50%. Holy crap, that's pretty good. Ally rest in all bounds 80. It's kind of nice. There's a 55, there's a 60, and then there's a 80. So it's a really strong version of this. That's Harima. Then we have... Ooh, wait a second. I think I know where this guy is. Or do I? There we go. There he is. Another Orgonite here. Let's go through his kit. Attacks 1 enemy. Destroys 10% of the target's max HP. Destroys 20% of the target's max HP instead if the target is under a provoke debuff. Stacks up to 50%. Increases this champion's turn meter by 20%. Increases this champion's turn meter by 40% instead if the target is under a provoke debuff. Damage based on HP. A2 by the horns. Attacks 1 enemy. Will ignore 50% of the target's defense and any stone skin buffs if this champion's max HP is greater than the target's. If the target is killed, instantly activates the hard-earned confidence skill. If the target survives, heals all allies by an amount equal to the difference between the target's current HP and max HP. Then we have the A3. Attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance, booked up to 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Will ignore 50% resilience against the targets whose max HP is lower than this champion's. Places a counter attack buff on this champion for 2 turns, damage based on HP. Then we have the passive. Is that all you got? I kind of like the passive name of the passive. Enemies under provoke debuffs deals 50% less damage. Allies deal 20% more damage against enemies under provoke debuffs if there are multiple champions on the same team, yada yada yada. And then the aura by 80. Accuracy aura. Sounds pretty decent. Sounds like I like that it's a lot of ignore defense. I like the ignoring stone skin as well. So those things are kind of nice. I also like the whole this passive here. Like if you confidently can place a bunch of provokes, you're increasing the damage of your team by a lot. Not a bad pick. I'm not sure if this would be my pick, but not a bad pick. Then we have Baird the Broad. What faction is this? Something tells me it's like barbarian or something. Sounds barbarian to me. Oh, definitely not. It is. Wait a second. No, it's Sylvan Watcher. Baird. There he is. A1 attacks one enemy, places one 15% continuous heal buff on this champion and the ally with the lowest HP, excluding this champion for 1 turn. Okay. Thieving Axeman attacks one enemy 3 times, has a booked up to 100% chance of stealing all buffs from this target. The second hit transfer all debuffs from this champion to the target. The third hit applies this debuff spread effect, taking all debuffs from the target and placing them on all other enemies. Whoa. It sounds like a very fun ability. Then we have the A3. Attacks all enemies, places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, has a 75% up to a 100% chance of placing a Pain Link debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. The Pain Link debuff reflects 45% of the damage reflected in The Pain Link debuff reflects 45% of the inflicted damage. Also places a counterattack buff on this champion and the ally with the highest crit damage. Okay, I kind of like. I mean, it would be really good if it's on all, but I kind of like how it's like based on like either crit damage or was this on? It was based on with the lowest HP. And then we have the passive heals all allies by 40% of any damage dealt to this champion. At the end of this champion's turn, places 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 1 turn. Has this like Vogoth vibes to this? And then ally defense and all balanced by 30%. He doesn't sound super bad, nor does he sound really good. I would probably pass on this guy. He sounds a little bit niche. Then we have Freya Fateweaver. Don't really have to go through which faction that is. Know that for a fact. Wait a second. No, she should. Yeah, there she is. It was Fateweaver. Yeah. Okay, a little bit of a. Need to drink some water. Freya, I can see being really nice in PvE. She's also really annoying in PvP. Shields is all I'm saying, okay? Shields. Really annoying. Let's go through it. Attacks A1 attacks all enemies, has a 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Activates this skill when a shield buff placed by the champion is removed. Occurs once per turn. A2 places 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense and each target's champion's max HP. Then A3 removes all debuffs from all allies and places 30 block debuffs on them for 2 turns. Also fills the turn meters of all allies by 20%. Passive increases this champion's defense by 5% each time an ally inflicts a critical hit, stacks up to 50%. Active effect prevents the death of the ally with the highest crit damage except this champion and keeps them alive with 1 HP when hit with a fatal attack. With a fatal hit. If there are multiple champions on the same team, only one will activate, then heals that ally by 20% of the max HP and activates an instant turn effect. If you pull her, you're probably not gonna get disappointed. Like, placing block debuffs, okay? Filling turn meter. Having an insane shield on you. You will find her be like, you will find value in this champion 100%. Really annoying in live arena. Yeah. Then we have wait a second, hold on. Okay, wait, I'm gonna try. Is she also here? Matriarch. She sounds like she should be here, but she isn't. Okay, let's have a look where she's from. She is Orcs. Okay, don't know about this champion. Where is she? Am I being blind here? Oh, I was looking for Matriarch. But okay. Most orc champions are just, I don't know, just, yeah, okay. A1 attacks one enemy 2 times, heals the champs by 5% of their max HP after each hit. Each hit also has a 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff on the target for 1 turn. A2 decrease the duration of all allied debuffs by 1 turn. White, just cleanse, please. Places a 50% increase, or places a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, or also place a taunt buff and unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns. Okay. Attacks all enemies, place a shield buff on all allies equal to 25% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. Whenever a shield buff placed by this champion expires or is removed by damage, heals that ally by 15% of the max HP and place it 25% strengthen. Okay. Passive, all allies under shield buffs receive 10% less damage. Okay, niche. I would rather go for Freya any day of the week. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say if you had to pick, which you can't do. Yeah, I would still go Freya. This, yeah, I would be like, if I pull this, I'm like, can I find any value for her? Her kit raid's kinda cool, but yeah. Storm Herald Hecaton. Okay, we do not need to, like, we know this guy. This is a champion we actually want for, to some degree, specific reasons. Let's go through his kit. A1 attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance, booked up to 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff for and an enfeeble debuff on the target for 1 turn. Also has a 25% chance that these debuffs cannot be resisted. If each enemy has a number of buffs that is equal to or less than this champion's, attacks all enemies instead. This attack is always critical, has a 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff and an enfeeble debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Also has a 25% chance that these debuffs cannot be resisted. Dude, this guy's kit is like a freaking book. Holy shit. Chapter 5. A2 attacks one enemy. Before attacking, places a 60% increased defense buff for 2 turns and 1 Stormcall stack on all allies. This effect is always critical if the number of buffs on the target is equal to or less than this champion's. We'll ignore Stone Skin by buff and 50% of the target's defense if the number of buffs on the target is equal to or less than this champion's. If this attack kills the target, decrease turn meter of all and other enemies by an amount equal to the turn meter that the target had. We're gonna go back to the Storm Call because that is what makes this champion kinda cool. A3, place a 30% increased crit rate buff, a block damage buff, and a counter buff on a target ally for 2 turns. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 25%. Passive, whenever an ally under a Storm Call stack placed by this champion lands a critical hit, this champion deals additional pure damage to the target. If the target is not a boss or minion, the pure damage dealt is equal to 2% of the target's max HP for each buff on this champion, stacks up to 10%. If the target is a boss or a minion, the pure damage dealt is equal to 3% of the target's max HP. This damage cannot be critical. Occurs once per skill and once per target, does not count as an extra hit. This pure damage ignores the shield, block damage, and strengthen buffs. If there are multiple champions, yada yada yada, damage based on enemy max HP. And then we have a 24% ally speed in all battles. Let me say that again. Increases ally speed in all battles by 24%. That's really good. We need to have a look at the Storm Call because there is a relic that gives this buff, and then we also have Hecaton, similar to Pelops and Magma Shield. Stormcall. Each Stormcall stack increases the damage dealt by a champion by 5%. The number of stacks increases by 1% by 1 each time a champion with a Stormcall lands a critical hit. A champion can have a maximum of 5 Stormcall stacks at one time. When attacking with 5 Stormcall stacks, place a stun debuff on the target and removes all Stormcall stacks. This stun debuff cannot be resisted. So it's a really nice ability. Out of all the voids, I would definitely go for Storm Herald. He's a very, very, very strong champion, and a champion that I really, really want. So I think that would be my pick for the voids. We have Grass or Iron Gut. Ooh, I know where this guy is at. He's here, isn't he? Come on. Am I right? There he is. Oh, this is the shield guy, right. Let's go through his kit. A1. Defend the wall. Hodor. Attacks all enemies. Place a shield buff on all allies except this champion for 1 turn. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense. Then we have the A2. Attacks all enemies. Heals the champion by 10% of the damage dealt. Increases the duration of all buffs on all allies by 1 turn. Enemy damage based on enemy max HP. Okay. A3. Attacks all enemies. Has a booked up to 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Also place a 50% increased resilience buff and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Passive. Whenever this champion is attacked, heals all allies except this champion by 70% of the damage received. Only heals by 35% of the damage received from boss attacks. This effect has no cooldown. Active effect. Place an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn before receiving a fail hit. I personally don't find myself in like, oh my god, I really need a tanky champion. This guy is obviously an option for it. But I feel like this champion is maybe a little bit niche, perhaps. Apparently really good in Hydra and Chimera. But out of these 2 champions, I would rather go for Storm Herald Hecaton. Again, it depends on what you need. Soulless. Oh, I don't really... Is it... Where's this champion from? Knight's Revenant. Let's see here. Where are you? There you are. Okay, let's go through his kit. Shield looks kind of cool. Oh, dude, the chest plate also looks kind of cool. Oh, like he's capturing souls. I get it. Okay. Attacks one. A1 attacks 1 enemy, has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. This reads a little bit like an old champion because I don't know. 35% chance of placing a stun debuff on 1 guy. Okay. Will ignore 30% of the target's defense if the target is under a provoke debuff. Okay. A2 attacks all enemies. Has a 100% chance to remove all buffs when booked up. Also has a 100% chance to place 50% decrease attack debuff and a hex debuff for 2 turns. A3 attacks all enemies, increases the duration of all debuffs on each target by 1 turn, then place a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, place a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns equal to 30% of damage inflicted, and a counter attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Damage increases by 10% for each debuff on the target. Then we have the passive. Will ignore 30% of target's resilience if the target's defense is lower than this champion's. Allies deal 25% more damage to targets under a provoke debuff placed by this champion. And then, same as always, if there are multiple champions on the same team with this skill, only one will activate, yada yada yada. Out of all the voids, there... Oh no, well, okay, so out of 2 out of 3, I feel like there's 2 like shield tanky champions. And then we have Storm Herald. I mean, because I look at Storm Herald as like a really nice, strong support with a lot of damage. I would definitely go for Storm Herald. If we would round all this up, who would I go for each sort of day? Okay, if you're pulling ancients, primals, or sacreds, and why would you pull primals? But if you're pulling ancients, I guess, I would see. The problem is, I have Pelops, I have Masahiro, but see, I don't have like a super annoying CC champion, so maybe I would go Armance. And if I didn't have the AoE Reviver on the Shadowkin, and I didn't... If I don't have a reliable Reviver on the Shadowkin, I would find the most value actually on the Masahiro, the Belmonk, is what I'm basically trying to say. If we're pulling Void Shards, it is... okay, so if I have Odin, I would definitely go with Tamisha, for the simple fact that, I mean, Marius +1, +2, +3, +4, let's go. But no, Odin Faefather, if I don't have him, 100%. He's really, really good. On Wednesday, who will we go for here? Well, Freya is really nice, really annoying, but we have shield champions. So when I'm reflecting like this, I need, like, I do the same for you guys, okay? Don't just blindly look at Hell Hades and like, oh my god, this guy has a 4.5 and this guy has a 5-star and this guy has a 3.5. For example, Freya diminishes in value specifically for me because I have block debuffs, I have cleanse, I have turn meter controls, and I have kind of a lot of shield champions. So Freya for me is maybe not the most prioritized champion. Oh, man. Maybe Harima. But also that's a little bit niche, I feel like. But probably Harima. If we're pulling Voids, 110% chance Hecaton. And I would probably go for another Hecaton, even if it's between the other two guys. So yeah. Those are the champions that I would go for if I was pulling. But hey, I'm not pulling. But if you are, let me know who you are going for in the comments below. And other than that, I post every day. Every day. If you like this sort of content, let me know with a like, subscribe. And other than that, I'll see you guys next time.